On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Ray Espinoza. He is the VP of Cloud Security at Medallia. We're going to be talking about security teams and how they are viewed from the confidence standpoint. I think Ray's got a great background. He has some thoughts around how surveying and assessing how security teams are performing, how they're viewed, and getting more feedback from the user base will help security teams make better decisions. Excited to have him on. Ray, thanks for being on the podcast.
Absolutely, Amir. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. So two things I always ask of guests is to kind of understand what the company does. If you could tell us what Medallia does, and then after that, let us know what the responsibilities you have as a VP of Cloud Security.
Sure, absolutely. So Medallia is awesome. Medallia helps our customers better understand their customers through tons of different types of signals and analytics and insights. They started off early on as a company who allowed their customers to send surveys. How well did we do? Would you recommend us to a friend, et cetera? And we've been able to expand on top of that, allowing folks to share voice messages and being able to glean great insights from there as well and continue to grow. So it's exciting. It's great to be able to help customers really understand their own so they can grow and be successful.
Awesome.
And then as far as I have the honor and privilege of leading an amazing security organization responsible for securing all of Medallia's products. I'm also responsible for securing medallions as a whole. So I own corporate security and helping drive security education awareness and all the technical aspects that go into security as a whole.
Awesome. And I guess your title is Cloud Security, just maybe some context of what the infrastructure looks like, just to kind of guide us in the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So Medallia and its products are all SaaS-based services. And so those all live in the cloud. Many of us, when we hear the cloud, we may think of AWS. We've built our own private cloud and co-locations all around the world, but Medallia has grown through acquisition also. And so that gives us the ability to run production workloads in other public cloud environments, maybe Google Cloud, IBM. And we recently announced a public partnership with Oracle Cloud. And so we're getting workloads deployed in that area. So it gives me and my team a unique opportunity to really live that true multi-cloud strategy of how do we drive security? How do we drive operational efficiency when we have workloads in more than one place? So fun and unique challenge we continue to make progress on.
Awesome. And I guess this topic, the topic of this episode is really talking about, how security teams are viewed, especially from a, confidence standpoint. That's obviously utmost importance. I know you'd mentioned previously concepts around surveying and assessing how some of those, touch points are looking. And I guess maybe at the highest level, when we're talking about, confidence in the security team, maybe if you could just tell us what you mean by that, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, security teams were the team that said no to folks. They were like, don't do this. You're doing this. You're doing it wrong. No, you can't do that. All that has been completely flipped on its head because it just doesn't work. At the end of the day, security teams, like every other team in an organization, we have to enable the business to win, period. We have to help the business understand the risks in taking some of the decisions, but ultimately, it's more so about how do we enable the business to move forward in a secure way with the amount of risk that we feel that we can tolerate. So maybe that means small changes to what the deliverable would be, but we still try to work towards that outcome. And so a lot goes into that. And, again, as you start to learn your folks and your stakeholders, it's all about earning their trust at this point. How do we make sure that they come to the table so they don't skirt around you like folks did historically? When you have a team that says no all the time, you're going to say, you know what, let's find another way. Maybe we can escalate. Maybe we can go around. Let's go ahead and make these decisions so that we don't have to worry about somebody telling us no. And in today's world, we actually need to earn trust, and we need to help them understand that, when you want to go somewhere, bring us to the table. We'll help you find a solution that we feel mutually works, that helps us get to that end state. And a lot goes into that. Historically, security was done sort of in a vacuum, and it was done, quietly and in the shadows. And, you hit it on this previously. Security teams, if you didn't talk and you didn't hear about security, then security was doing a good job. Ultimately, I found that doesn't work. You really have to understand, what's the value that the security team brings? Can I trust them? And more importantly, if I see something bad or weird, how am I going to be treated as an individual so that I feel comfortable knowing that, they're going to be able to help me? They're not going to make me feel dumb. There was this whole, I remember back early IT days, the IT guys were the smartest person in the room and they made everybody else feel sort of inferior. And, it's pretty ridiculous in this case. And so we came up with the concept and the idea of let's do some PR. Let's help folks understand. Let's be completely transparent with the work that we're doing and why it's important. And then we'd like to ask folks through surveying, do you feel we're doing a good job? Do you feel like you're well educated? Do you feel like you're informed? And more importantly, do you feel like the security of our organization is appropriate for where we are in our journey? And obviously that's different if you're a venture-backed startup, 30 to 40 people, or if you're a publicly traded software company, 4,000, 5,000 employees, et cetera. Those types of journeys are different. And so what makes sense for the company at the time? And we would ask questions, we would put them in a survey, and we would ask different things. Do you know how to report a security incident? Some of the things that were tactical, because that gave us an opportunity to say the education that we're driving, the PR that we're doing, it's working or it's not. And so we take some of that data, we make some changes, we refine, we deploy, and we start to share, and then we survey again. And again, it's all about, are we having the intended outcome that we want? Do we want folks to know how to report incidents, that they know that they'll be respected and they'll be encouraged and supported when they do bring an issue to us? And, are we earning their trust? And it's received really well. I've done that at multiple organizations now, of just bringing security more to light, making it easily accessible, demystifying some of the security theater that we would talk about, before, through different means of education and whatnot. There's brown bag sessions, there's quarterly briefings, and just enabling folks. And what I found, there's a lot of folks out there who love to lean in and love to learn. When you make it easy to understand and accessible, it's easy for them to buy in. And then when they're bought in, it's easy for them to say, that's weird. Man, I'm going to go ahead and ask the security team about it. And we've seen great results from it, and just a number of items that come to us, and the confidence that folks feel.
That's interesting. I guess one thing you said there, I'm going to come back to actually the survey itself, but actually you went back to talking about almost like, the PR nature of what needs to be done. And I've had previous security people on, and it is talking about that security champion. And the one thing that, I've always been curious about is, as prevalent as security is in the news and the media, I mean, there's movies made about security glitches in the internet. I mean, tons of this stuff happens. Yet we still need the PR champion in an org to make people aware of the value of security. I mean, is there just a natural gap because it's like you had mentioned, I guess we talked about, it's historically was done behind the scenes, so no one really saw it tangibly. It's like turning on your ADT at home. It's there. You may not think about it. It's somebody else's problem in monitoring if something goes wrong. Is that like a gap in just the evolution, or is that just part of it? It's out of sight, out of mind, and you're trying to bring it to the forefront?
I think you hit it on the head when you said, it's someone else's problem. And when you don't talk to folks about it, they're going to continue to assume, well, my job is to do this. And somebody else, security, they clearly do stuff. There's bad things out there. I read about it. I hear about it, but they're going to handle it. And the fact of the matter is that everybody in our organization is a part of our security team. I told them that the very first time that I had a briefing with them. I said, congratulations. Thank you. All I need you to do is to lean in and engage. Our job is to educate you and make sure that you understand the threats you're likely to face and what we expect you to do. And we'd love to give you some insight on how we're going to respond as well. And I think that's the piece that's really helped them figure out, well, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I actually own a stake in the security of this company. I guess I didn't realize that, and we start talking about specific examples of, well, you folks in the accounting and finance team, we've seen lots of threats based on email where folks are asking for W-2s. They're pretending to be a CEO or a CFO. These are the types of things that you're going to want to be aware of and be on the lookout for. And here's what you should do. And, we'll talk a little about when you do that, here's what we do. And we talk through that process as well. One of the things that we also found is you taking something big in the media and helping them understand, so what really happened? There was this big breach, SolarWinds. What really happened? Who was behind that? What does that mean for us? And what are we doing about it? And it makes it more real to them. And I think it comes back to, I have a stake. Now I know what to do. And now I know what's done around here. There's power in knowledge and understanding how some of the things work that are around you. And many times it's also highlighting some of the threats that may be present that they didn't really think about. And so that piece has been a bit of a mind shift that's gone over really well.
Awesome. I guess when you're talking about surveying, I guess, what are some examples of questions? And the reason I'm asking is, like, if I'm a listener and let's say I'm working for like a 200-300 person company and I'm like, hey, this, it'd be nice to get some views of how the people in the organization think of security, and security isn't my job. Like, what type of questions would I even start to look at if I was even going to go down that journey?
Absolutely. So I believe there's huge value in asking some specific and tactical questions to start, and then a money question at the end. And I'll clarify what that means. So tactical, asking somebody, how well do you feel prepared to respond to the threats that you're likely to face as an employee? And you make that on a 5 or a 10-point scale. And that just comes down completely subjective, but how do I feel as an individual? You can ask, do you know how to report a security incident, as a specific question, because that's usually valuable. What good is it if you're aware of issues, but you're like, I don't even know who to contact, or I don't know where to go. Do I email security? Do I send a message on Slack? Et cetera. We need to do a good job of that and continue to do that. And then you can go even deeper of, do you feel security is at an appropriate place for our organization based off of what you know from your narrow point of view, or maybe even a broader point of view for our executives? Do you feel like we're doing enough to enable the business to manage those risks and continue to win in business? And then when I mentioned the money question, it really comes down to confidence. And the traditional NPS question is, would you recommend us to a friend? You think about it, gosh, I wish somebody can say, I recommend Medallia security team to a friend because, they're just grade A, but it doesn't really, lend over well. One of the questions that I've asked is, do you have confidence that the security team is going to be able to engage and support you when you need them, and that they're going to manage that situation appropriately? Again, completely subjective. We put that on a 10-point scale. You're going to have folks that feel great about it, who had the opportunity to engage, or they've seen some of the training, they've seen some of the briefings, and they have some insight into how things get done. There tends to be a little bit higher level of confidence. And then folks who have no idea, they end up being a detractor. And those are great because those give us an opportunity to say, we need to continue to hit certain populations here within the organization. And we start to track this. The news is the news. We collect that feedback back. We treat that last question like an NPS survey, and that's our point in time. And we continue to use that as a barometer. So as we roll out new training, as we roll out, new type of security marketing material and events, are they having the intended result? When we survey them again next quarter, do we see that slowly going up? And if we continue to stay stagnant, we're probably doing something wrong. Unless, and it's been awesome. At my previous organization, I had an NPS score of 92 for the security team, which, it's pretty dang good. Most, scores don't really get that high on NPS. And, I took a lot of pride in that. The team took a lot of pride, and we do a really good job, and it's a concerted effort. And it's one of the things that we're working on here. We're just about to launch our security NPS survey within my current organization here at Medallia, and it's going to be fantastic. Whatever it is, I just want to know what it is, because I know we're going to continue to build on it with all the work that we have ahead of us this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just thinking, as you're kind of going through it, some of the survey questions that you're asking almost should build out some kind of standard operating procedure for security issues that people might not be aware of, and when they see it, or just to have the confidence of what to do. And obviously it'd be nice to have that run by a security person, but I almost think like even smaller orgs, let's say 40, 50 person startups, maybe need something like that, right? So employee John or Jane Doe, have an idea of what to expect. Because I think the worst thing for all of us is going through something without any baseline of having thought about it. And then we're presented with options or decisions, and we tend to make those on the fly in a vacuum, not always great, but knowing, hey, be aware if you see this type of email or content, or this is actually happening. I mean, those are things that maybe even if you don't have a devoted security person, you could be doing in your work.
Absolutely. Many organizations have an engineering organization, especially we start talking about technology teams. Technology teams continue to manage issues. They have to monitor for them. When something happens, they typically do some sort of triage. They'll pull in different folks. They'll try to figure out what's the issue. And you start to get better at that over time. Because security is so prevalent in the world today, even if you're a 5-person startup, if you're in technology, you have, some sort of external consumer using your service, you have to think about, how can this be abused? What are the threats, that are inherent to us on how we operate our business, and what can we do about it? And so even if you don't have a dedicated security person, that ends up falling on maybe your CTO, and ends up falling on an engineering leader, or maybe there's somebody there who helps, manage technology. It doesn't need to be someone dedicated to security, but it doesn't mean they can't think about security until they hire somebody. Many times they end up managing through that. And there are organizations who are small where this gets dictated to them by a compliance framework. If they have a SaaS service, they may go for SOC 2 when they're still really early, because they know they want to go up market and sell to mid to large enterprise customers who that's table stakes just to get through the door. That's going to require you to have an incident response policy and a program, and to do security awareness. And a lot of those foundational activities that security teams do it's mandated by that framework, which ends up getting folks that foundational piece up and running before they're really ready for a security leader to really take it up to that next level.
Absolutely. That's some great points. And I guess when you're starting to, build the survey and you have that baseline, I know you're excited to get your initial, NPS score back. When you're looking at the feedback loop to actually then improve, the way security engages, how are you taking that information? How are you assessing it to then improve your security work?
We try to look at, do we have things in the pipeline in our current schedule that we want to do that are going to address some of the concerns? One of the things that I failed to mention previously is we do have a free form box up the bottom for every survey that I do is what else should we know? What else bothers you, concerns you, or how do you think security has failed? We make it pretty open-ended, and we take a lot of that feedback of, I've seen consistent themes of like, I have no idea what security does. Great. We're going to share our roadmap. We're going to share what we do and why we do and why it's important to the organization. That piece is covered. I don't know how to respond. Fantastic. That's also going to be included in some of the training that we do. And we try to match up some of the concerns that we have or some of the concerns that others voice to us to some of the activity that we have planned. But, it works in a secular fashion. We can't just say, oh, we're going to cover this and then do it and be done. We need to survey again. Did everything we do have the intended result? And if not, we need to take a step back. We need to look at it and say, this isn't working. And maybe it provides us an opportunity to take a different approach. And that piece is critical. Many organizations do security awareness in October during Security Awareness Month or annually, and that's it. And I think that's a huge loss, for the organization when you're not making it easy to understand and you're keeping it constant. Because the threats don't go away. The threats don't wait until October, November when everybody's done some training. They're constant. And so using those as opportunities to tie something that happens externally into what can happen here. That's what I found is extremely powerful because you read these things, you're like, oh, that happens to somebody else, not us. But, me as a security leader, I'm like, I see that. I understand it. Here's what we would do. And here's how we think about it and how they were affected here. Here's where we're at. And here's what we're thinking. And here's what our long-term plans are going to be. It sure does go a long way in saying, okay, at least somebody's thinking about it. And at least I kind of understand. And it makes it, it continues to improve engagement, which has been great.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting, I mean, you're obviously you're in the midst of this all, but when you're seeing, like the Colonial Pipeline, ransom and, people getting compromised for different things, not only do you have to worry about the external services that the engineering org has exposed, but then you have to make sure that individuals are also then self-contained because that could be inadvertently, a weak point. And I think you're surveying and bringing some of that education and constantly keeping, I like the idea of resurveying after you've implemented some of those features and seeing, have they seen anything? Have they felt anything improve in the confidence and making sure that you're constantly going back and getting that incremental feedback probably keeps that program moving forward and keeping you on your roadmap.
Absolutely. I mean, many times I've worked with individuals in the past that are brilliant, fantastic, but they always came with the approach of like, well, I know best. And so whatever we do, whatever I say we're going to do, that's what's best for all of us, period. And, I'm a father of 4. All of my kids completely different. They learn different. They're motivated different. That is a small sort of microcosm and view of how things happen in the workplaces as well. We're all different. We learn different. We engage differently. And so we have to think about, getting content and doing training and driving awareness through different mediums and different channels. Some folks just want to watch a recording. They don't want to be live and engaged. Some folks really want to read a white paper, et cetera. We have to think about all those different ways that folks can engage. And the one thing that I did not mention too is one of the things that we also track is, total population of engagement. Like out of, the 4,000 employees that we have, are we getting, 20% engagement? And do they say great things? If so, that might not tell us the full picture. But if we're getting 80 to 90% engagement, that to me is a much stronger indicator of how bought in folks are. And, early on, we incentivize folks to share some of their feedback. And, we may do a little mini raffle prize to try to, get that going. But once you start to build some of that momentum, and again, we have positive outcomes that helps to, keep some of that engagement high. For some folks, I've had this exact conversation. They're like, gosh, no matter what I try, I just can't get folks to care. And then, I've been able to brainstorm with them. Well, what about this? And have you been able to do this? Have you been able to connect the dots between outside issues and things that, how, that Colonial Pipeline or, some of the larger ransomware breaches, they may have started with a phishing campaign and how a single individual ultimately led to, such a critically impacting incident? No, well, I haven't really thought about it that way. And so again, learning how to make it personal to folks and getting some of that out there, I think has been key. Because if we're not getting the engagement we want, we need to change our tactics there as well. And a lot of times we'll leverage, I'll talk with our marketing folks, our PR folks. What do you do to drive engagement? You're a professional in this area. How can we learn from you all and try to continue to have success? And, I'm very much of what can we learn? I challenge my team. What can we learn from others and what can we learn by this process? And how do we get iteratively better over time? We shouldn't just be happy with where we are. Let's get this as, well-oiled and greased as possible so that, folks look forward to it. How awesome would that be if folks are like, I can't wait to see what the security team brings for us. And I feel so empowered, maybe that's a daydream that I have, but I sure as heck have seen a lot of really positive engagement by us just taking that approach and sharing, what we have.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was actually just wondering. So, and I think that engagement piece is obviously critical, especially, given, the survey and the results you're getting back. When you're starting to do this at larger orgs, let's say 500, 1,000 and above, are you engaging with department managers to make sure their teams are engaged? Are you approaching, I guess, how do you approach, obviously, if you have a team, let's say it's in finance, right? Or accounting where, they don't do a whole lot with the security team. How does that conversation go to make sure that they understand that the survey is important as for the whole entire organization, really?
It's by investing time. Not only do we have broader employee awareness, but we have targeted training for specific organizations for threats that are relevant and specific to them, and then build and maintain those relationships. So, I hinted on this earlier, where talking to finance about, accounting and finance related threats, mainly due to phishing, et cetera, other issues where they've been attacked, going to engineering and talking about secure software development and have bugs or vulnerabilities in software have led to some of these issues and what they can do to be a part of it. Doing some of that targeted training as well also hits home because we have inherent threats as an employee and an organization. We all need to care about phishing. We all need to care about malicious software, et cetera. But when you make it specific around, within your org, here's the things you can be on the lookout for. And, your tools, your processes are different. Are there areas or are there ways that you feel like that could be manipulated or that risk can be introduced there? And if so, think about it and help us understand, become our human intrusion detection system, because software only goes so far. What are those things that we can't monitor for? But the targeted piece is huge. And then maintaining relationships. We do a lot of communication at the employee level and some of the public Slack channels, reaching out to senior leaders in the organization, helping them understand this is critically important for who we are as an organization. Security is important to all of us. Can you help cascade that message down to encourage folks? And so we try to hit them a number of different ways. We don't make it mandatory by any means, because then it just feels oppressive, but it's more so, continuing to incentivize, which again, early on, the first, 50% of folks are going to be put into a raffle, et cetera. And you only have to invest 2 minutes of your time. And we found that, you make it fun, you make it engaging, and it helps. And then we just continue to drive a lot. And one thing also is sharing the results and being transparent about what we heard and what we saw and how we're going to make those changes. What good is it if you share your feedback and then maybe you see a difference and maybe you don't? But if, we're honest of this is what we've heard, and we'll do that in a security newsletter or something else. This is what we've heard. This is the changes we're making. And here's what you can expect now going forward. Again, another way for us to try to drive engagement, because you feel like that loop is closed and not you just sent your voice off into the ether.
Does the team, I don't know if this is done in security, I'm just going to ask, it might be a bonehead question, but I'm curious, but do security teams ever proactively send out emails that look like phishing examples just to show people how easy it is internally? It's obviously safe, but it's just like, hey, this is how easy it is, and this is what it looked like so that you're aware.
Phishing testing is hugely popular. There's companies out there that's their entire business model, is to help security teams put together a safe phishing message and then be able to send those out in campaigns and figure out how effective was it. Did folks report it appropriately? And then how many folks, who clicked on the link using it as a teachable moment and not as an opportunity to hit them over the head of like, well, you failed and you did bad. And it's like, here's what you did and here's how it can lead to something else. And here's a link to some of the training that we have to make sure that you're better prepared the next time this happens, or when the real phishing message comes through, how to respond. But absolutely. And also some compliance frameworks mandate or require that some of those phishing exercises get done, but they're great for also figuring out, not only subjectively do our folks feel confident, but objectively, do we have data to support that they're reporting issues when we send these test campaigns through, and that we have folks not clicking on some of the links.
Awesome, man. I love it. I think there's some really good pieces there. If people are, thinking about how to handle their security, how to bring awareness, different size orgs. I think great discussion. If somebody wants to reach out to you, pick your brain on any of this stuff, what's a good way of getting a hold of you? LinkedIn, Twitter?
LinkedIn's probably best. I am on Twitter, and gosh, I really wish that I can get into tweeting a bit more, but it just feels weird for me. But on Twitter, you can find me at Ray Espinoza Sec. It would probably stand out because I don't get a ton of messages on there, and I do try to share from time to time, but LinkedIn would absolutely be best.
Okay. We'll definitely include your LinkedIn profile on the show notes. And if anyone does want to reach out to Ray, touch on anything he mentioned, feel free. Hey, Ray, thanks for being on, man. I think this was a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Amir.
Absolutely. And that's it for this episode. We'll be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, I always ask for two things. Share the podcast if you guys have found any value in it. That's how we've been growing. So thank you. And secondly, if you want me to talk about a topic, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know. I'll do my best to find a guest to do that. Until next time, goodbye.